After the PS5 Pro announcement, I've seen a ton of people saying if you're spending that much money, you might as well buy a gaming PC instead. And that made me think, let's revisit the actual value proposition between the PS5 Pro and building your own gaming PC with similar hardware. And then what if we wanted to beat the PS5 Pro with better hardware? How much would we be paying? Now, traditionally, gaming consoles offer much better value at the price point than you can get from a gaming PC. Because when you buy a gaming PC, you're buying all of the parts, and everybody's selling you those parts and making those parts needs to make a profit on those parts. However, gaming consoles not only benefit from the mass scale of production because they're making millions of units and those kind of bulk deal discounts, but also PlayStation and Xbox can afford to actually sell you the console at a loss. They could actually lose money compared to what it costs them to make that and ship it out to you compared to what you're paying them for it. Now, how can they do that? Well, because they control the ecosystem, they are planning on selling you a subscription to PlayStation Plus or Xbox, Game Pass. And also when they sell games, they're going to take a cut of the sale, even if it's not a first-party title. So they're able to do that, whereas a PC hardware manufacturer doesn't get a cut of any kind of subscription or game sale that you end up buying on your PC. So they can't do the same thing. So that's definitely something to keep in mind, although, we might compare the cost of ownership for a PC as being different to a console because you don't need to subscribe to pay for online services, and you don't need maybe to always pay as much for games, things like that. Anyway, the point is we now know more about the PlayStation 5 Pro hardware, which means that we can now build a PC that fits with these upgraded specs. Now, it won't be exact parts, but I'll explain my choices to try to build an equivalent to the PS5 Pro PC. Now, first we'll choose the CPU. Now, the thing about the PlayStation 5 Pro CPU is I think this is the biggest issue with the upgrade overall, which is that it's not really a better CPU. It's basically the same CPU as in the original PlayStation 5, which is already not super powerful. There are definitely games that are CPU limited and cannot reach 60 FPS because they are CPU limited in that situation, and that means that the PS5 Pro also won't be able to reach 60 FPS at those settings, although maybe it could run higher end graphics and higher resolution, but it won't increase the CPU performance. Now, the PlayStation 5 Pro's gaming performance is roughly equivalent to a Ryzen 5 3600. Now, to be clear, it's not exactly the same hardware, but this is offering similar gaming performance. If you don't believe me, check out videos that like Digital Foundry has done, for example, where they compare CPU-limited situations on a PlayStation 5 to a gaming PC running a Ryzen 5 3600 in a CPU-limited scenario in the same game, same situation, and they achieve roughly the same frame rate in many tests. Not every game, because optimizations can differ between console and PC. So that'll be about $91. I'm also, by the way, not saying that this is the PC you should build. We're starting out with roughly matching the hardware equivalent for the PS5. So I'm not saying everybody run out and buy a Ryzen 5 3600, to be clear. We'll talk more about some better choices maybe as we go. Now, this CPU will come with a boxed cooler. And you know what? PlayStation 5 Pro isn't running some kind of amazing 360 millimeter AIO cooler for the CPU. It's going to be some kind of... Anyway, so the point is to save on costs for this build, I'm going to use the stock cooler for now. I'm not saying everybody should do that. I'm saying we're cutting costs. You know what? Gaming consoles also cut costs in a lot of situations. Now, we need a compatible motherboard. One option is now I could sort prices low to high and look at the cheapest possible AM4 motherboard. However, the cheapest possible motherboard doesn't have built-in Wi-Fi, and a gaming console does. And if you're planning on using this PC as a gaming console on your TV, you might not have an Ethernet port right there. The point is, I think to be fair, we should grab a board with Wi-Fi. Hey, look, this one is $10 more. It has Wi-Fi. I'm going to go ahead and include it. And away we go. So we've got a compatible motherboard with Wi-Fi for our CPU. Now we've got to choose some memory. Now this is an important difference between gaming consoles and gaming PCs. Gaming consoles like the PlayStation 5 use unified memory, meaning it has 16 gigabytes of memory, which is shared between the GPU as VRAM and between the CPU as just system memory. It's a unified 16 gigabytes of VRAM. On a gaming PC, you have to have separate system memory from your VRAM if you're using a dedicated graphics card, which we'll be doing here in order to match the performance. So we're going to have to buy some amount of memory. The PlayStation 5 Pro, I'm going to go ahead and call it, let's use 16 gigabytes of memory to match it. Now, realistically, for a gaming PC, I would prefer to have 32 gigabytes of VRAM. But to be more console equivalent here, I'm going to go with 2x8. You definitely want to be in dual channel mode, so don't buy one 16 gigabyte stick. So we're going to filter for 2x8 sticks. Now I'm going to sort prices low to high, and we'll look at the speeds available. So it's looking like we're going to have the cheapest possible option is $28 for the RAM kit, but that has a cast latency of 22. Whereas we could get the same DDR4 3200 speed with a lower cast latency of 16 for only $1 more. But then it doesn't look like we significantly increase the speeds in any meaningful way without spending a lot more money, it looks like. So if anything faster is even on that list, I think we'd have to go pretty far down. So I'm going to go ahead and slot in the $28, sorry, not that one. We're doing the $1 more version. Sorry, we're doing the better cast latency option. So we'll get the CL16 memory and away we go. All right, next up is storage. So the PlayStation 5 has a pretty fast SSD, and the PS5 Pro has upgraded it to 2 terabyte drive. So we are going to, if we are matching the PS5 Pro, we are going to go with a 2 terabyte drive. So I'm going to filter for at least 2,000 gigabytes. And the PlayStation 5 Pro has a fast drive. I think we're going to need to go at least PCIe Gen 4 to fully match that. However, in gaming situations on PC, I've noticed that really you don't actually see a gaming impact in any game I've tested with actually going with a bit of a slower drive. Now, I wouldn't want to go with a hard drive, though. So I might say I'd take either a 3.0 or a 4.0 drive, and we're not going to see a measurable impact to gaming performance. But we want at least, wait, sorry, I'm not seeing sorry, yeah, we are going to want at least 2 terabytes, though. It looks like we are getting some 4.0 drives showing up around the $100 mark, and we wouldn't have to pay much more to get a 4.0 drive, although I don't think the motherboard we selected even supports 4.0, does it? Anyway, so the point is we get something like the Team Group MP33. Let me double check the speeds on this to make sure they're not total garbage. 1800, 1500, it's going to run any game you want just fine. So I wouldn't worry too much about the speeds. Technically, the PS5 Pro SSD is faster, but we can go ahead and, we're saving money here. The rough performance will be the same. Okay, the most important thing to match the PS5 Pro is going to be the video card, but maybe we should throw in a case and power supply first. Well, you know what? Let's go ahead and do the video card, because I think this is going to be the most interesting discussion, because so far, everything I've said so far basically applies to the PS5 original, separate from the Pro. So what do we know about the PS5 Pro? They've said they've upgraded the GPU. They're upgrading it to a GPU that has 67% more compute units than the current PS5 console and 28% faster memory, and overall this enables up to 45% faster rendering for gameplay, making the experience much smoother. So the 45% faster rendering for gameplay is the really important number here. To match the PS5 GPU, Pro GPU's gaming performance, we need a graphics card that is about 45% more powerful than the graphics card inside the PlayStation 5. Now, it's been well established that the closest available desktop graphics card to a PlayStation 5 non-Pro is the RX 6700. Again, people like Digital Foundry have done videos analyzing the performance of the RX 6700 versus a PlayStation 5. They often are fairly similar in performance, other than some games that probably have some optimization issues on one platform or the other. So if I use Tech PowerUp's relative performance chart to then look for GPU, to set this as a 100% baseline, we can now look at GPUs that are in the ballpark of 45% or so faster than the GPU inside the PS5. Now there's some other nuance we're going to need to discuss, But that basically puts us into GPUs like the 3070 Ti, the 7700 XT, the RX 6800, and the RTX 4070, with the 4070 definitely being more powerful than the GPU in the PS5 Pro, if we're looking at the performance scaling. Now, there's some other things we need to consider. For example, the PlayStation 5 Pro also has AI-driven upscaling. Unlike AMD graphics cards in the PC space currently. On the PC, you're going to be using FSR2, which is similar to what, or 3, but the upscaling component of that is still not an AI-driven upscaler. So the point is, you'd basically be doing what the original PlayStation could do for upscaling if you buy a current AMD graphics card on PC. Whereas NVIDIA graphics cards offer DLSS upscaling, which is an AI-driven upscaler. And at this point in time, we don't have the means to do a great image quality comparison between PSSR, FSR, and DLSS. So, but given that this is a big selling point for this console, my assumption would be that unless PlayStation has really screwed up badly, this will be a better upscaler than FSR, because otherwise there's no point in having this at all. The original PlayStation 5 could already do FSR. So whether it's as good as DLSS, I don't know. Maybe it's better than DLSS. We haven't seen it yet. Maybe it's not as good. But that's gonna, like I said, make this make this choice more complicated, because if I go with a obvious choice like an RX 6800, I think that when we're not factoring in the upscaling technology, you're basically spot on the performance when it comes to that 45% performance uplift. So this would be absolutely spot on. It's also great value, but you're going to lose out on that upscaling, and that I think is significant and worth thinking about. If I went with something like the 3070 Ti, we're in a similar performance ballpark overall, maybe slightly slower, and we get the AI upscaling. But the 3070 Ti only has 8 gigabytes of VRAM, and a PlayStation has 16 gigabytes of unified memory, and usually at least 12 gigabytes of that is available to use as VRAM, which means that the PlayStation 5 Pro can probably use texture settings and run at like 4K resolutions with settings turned up higher than what the VRAM capacity can handle on a 3070 Ti. So that means that the 3070 Ti also has its own, caveat compared to going with with it instead of, the RX 6800 had its own caveat. The 7700 XT is also hanging out here in the same kind of performance class, but again, like the RX 6800, doesn't have an AI upscaler. Which means that another option would be going with the RTX 4070. That'll have 12 gigabytes of VRAM, which is similar to the amount of of the PlayStation's unified memory that can generally get dedicated to VRAM, and it has the AI upscaler. It's also more powerful than a 45% uplift. Also, I should mention that the PS5 Pro is also calling out advanced ray tracing. So it's saying that the ray tracing could be at times double the performance and at times triple the performance of the original PS5 console, which is a lot more than our 45% uplift and even more than our compute unit uplift, implying that its ray tracing performance is probably more upgraded than just using a newer generation like the 7700 XT from AMD. Because they've probably backported RDNA 4 ray tracing components into the PlayStation 5 Pro GPU. So that basically means there is no exact match, as far as I can tell, for the PS5 Pro GPU. I could tell you that an RTX 4070 probably has better ray tracing, at least as good AI upscaling, and more performance. So if we want to just beat a PS5 Pro, I think the 4070 will do it. If we want to match the non-ray tracing and non-upscaling performance, I think the RX 6800 does it. So here's what I'm going to do. I think for now, we're going to slot in the 4070, and we'll have a PC that beats the PS5 Pro, but this is going to blow our budget. And then we'll look at, okay, what if we had gone with the 6800? So, you know what, or do we want to do it the other way around? Okay, so how about this? We're gonna get the closest equivalent, which I think is the 6800, but we lose out on the AI upscaler. or 7700 XT. Which way do you guys want to do it, guys? You know what? Let's start with the 4070. So we're building a PC that beats the PlayStation 5 Pro, but we might have blown our budget by going the NVIDIA option, okay? Now we would need, in fact, a case and a power supply. So a case is whatever you want it to be, okay? I would make sure it comes with fans. I would probably go with something with a mesh front for breathability, although the components in this PC are not super high performance or anything like that. And then it can look however you want it to look. Now, a micro ATX mini tower, you have to make sure your components would actually fit, although that might get you closer to your console size. This one seems to be small. It's white like a PS5. It has some fans in it. And so as long as it does fit our components, it's also not super expensive. So I'm just gonna say this is a complete placeholder. I've never used this case personally, but I'm just throwing in an option, and case here is a lot of it's just an aesthetic choice. What do you want this to look like? That's also one of the advantages of a PCO over a console. Maybe you don't like how the PS5 looks and you'd rather not have a white design or something like that. Anyway, I'm just throwing this one in here for now. Now, we also need a power supply. Now, PC Part Picker will kind of add up the power components. I believe the estimated wattage. This is only estimated to draw 350 watts. None of these parts are massive. Now, you don't want to only buy a 350 watt power supply, but while having a higher end power supply helps upgradability, that's not something the PlayStation 5 Pro has to worry about. They are going to kind of bare bones power supply you. So what if we give ourselves some headroom by at least filtering out to 550 watts and then sort prices low to high? But again, personally, I'd buy a bigger power supply, but we're trying to match what a PS5 Pro does. We're not trying to build the world's greatest gaming PC. Okay, so when you're looking at power supplies, some of them can be total garbage. You can use something like the PSU tier list to try to search for the power supply that you're looking for. Check if it's tier A, tier B, tier C. But in general, I'm not convinced the PlayStation 5 Pro is using some kind of world-class high-end power supply either. So that's something to consider. You can also look for, 80 plus gold certification and things like that. So again, I'm not saying that we're grabbing some amazing power supply, but let's see. I mean, Corsair is a reputable brand. This isn't their high-end unit. $60 instead of the cheapest ones down here at like $32. I mean, we could. Guys, this is going to be kind of what is your risk tolerance on frying your entire PC? Realistically, the odds of frying your PC are fairly low. I might go with a trusted brand, even if it's not a high-end power supply. We can call this a placeholder. So what is our overall cost? We're up here at $900 for this PC. Now, I will also say that this PC is actually more powerful, I think, than the PlayStation 5 Pro, because we went with the RTX 4070, which is more powerful, I would say, probably in ray tracing, and again, it's more like a 60% uplift over the original base model PS5 for the performance uplift. So I think this PC is more powerful than a PS5 Pro, but we're coming in at $900, and the PS5 Pro is coming in at $700 in the US. Now, this is where things get a little bit complicated because, okay, are we just saying we lost? Well, again, we did build something more powerful, not less powerful, or not even equal. So, we did cost a little bit more. What else? Well, I do have a few things to bring up. If I'm gaming on PC, I don't need to pay to play online. So if you're planning on playing online, I mean, I don't have a PS Plus membership, but I was just checking. PlayStation Plus is $80 a year, it looks like, if you buy the yearly subscription. So if I'm paying $80 a year, well, maybe we need to add that on. And also, if you're buying a PS5 Pro, are you buying the disk drive? Because it doesn't come with a disk drive. Now, the PC we built also doesn't come with a disk drive. But if you have a console game collection, then you might want to have a disk drive. So if you're also buying a disk drive, it looks like a PlayStation disk drive is another $80. So with that being said, we could calculate the math a little bit differently here. And if we buy even 1 year of online subscription and a disk drive, we're coming in at $860, which is now not far off of our PC build. Granted, the PS5 Pro will come with a controller, and we're going to have to buy a mouse and keyboard. So again, we can still kind of get technical on all of this. I'd also argue that generally PC games have better discount sales and things like that. And what if you wanted to buy more than 1 year of PlayStation service, right? 2 years of PS Plus at $80 each. Well, now we're up to $940. So I will say that I think our gaming PC here is technically more expensive than the PS5, but we're saving money on the subscription services, possibly on the overall price of games. And like I said, the RTX 4070 I think is more powerful than what we're seeing in the PS5 system. Now, also, if I was building this system, I would probably change a few things. So I'm not saying you should all rush out and build this. This was more a thought experiment. One thought is, if we're going with the theme of I want to beat the PS5 Pro, not just match the PS5 Pro, I think the Ryzen 5600 is, now we can say, definitely faster, and it doesn't increase the budget much. It only goes up to $115. I'm also, again, not saying that this is the ideal CPU to build, but again, this is still a pretty good low value kind of build on the CPU. I mean, low cost on the CPU. Doesn't blow our budget out too much more. And now we are beating the PS5 Pro in both the CPU and GPU performance. So it's just overall better. Other than our SSD is not super fast, but I'd say we're beating it overall. I'd also say that personally, I'd probably go with 32 gigabytes of memory instead of 16. So if we go with 2 by 16 instead of 2 by 8, this doesn't blow our budget out too much either. We can still get the DDR4 3200 CL16 at $48. So if I go ahead and slot that in instead, again, our budget increases a bit more. We're up to $955. But again, we have now more memory than the console has as well. And I think I just feel a lot better with the PC with 32 gigabytes of memory, and it's not that much more onto the price. The other thing I'll say is with a B450 board, if I'm going to add in a 5th gen processor, it's possible that we'll run into some BIOS compatibility without upgrading the BIOS. So I'd probably also look into maybe going with a B550 motherboard that would be less likely to have any kind of compatibility headaches when we try to build our system. So I could sort for B550, and I think I'm also gonna try to get the Wi-Fi onto it. And without researching these motherboards heavily, it looks like we have a couple of options here. MSI Pro VDH Wi-Fi. I think I remember that one being okay. It has a lot of 5-star reviews on here. That's at $100. So again, we're adding more to our build. But I like this build a lot better, and we're still under $1,000. From this point on, I would maybe take a little more thought about the case to make sure it's a case you really like. I would also probably, personally, I'd prefer a 750 to 850 watt power supply, even if it's unnecessary for my build, because that kind of power supply could last you for years and you'd have a lot of upgradability. So just those are a couple other thoughts on the build. But anyway, so I think overall I'd say that the PS5 Pro does still technically at its base $700 flat give you a bit more than what you could do on an equivalent PC. Especially because it's now offering that AI upscaling, so we couldn't go with the less expensive AMD GPU and say that we were totally matching its performance. But like I said, once you factor in the subscription cost and possibly the increased game pricing if you're buying the disk drive, well, now we're not too far off, and this gaming PC overall just flat out beats the PlayStation 5 Pro in pretty much every way, including the fact that it's a PC, it's not a console. A PC can be used for work, it can be used for school, it can be used to do a whole bunch of creative tasks, and it can be upgraded over time. It's a lot more versatile than a console. Although a console also has its own, nice factors of you just hit the button, it turns on, and it works. It quick resumes. You're right back into your game. So there's some conveniences to the console experience that are less convenient in a TV living room format than a PC is in an equivalent space. So anyway, I think I've rambled on enough about this. What do you guys think overall? You could let me know in the comments section, and I hope all of you have an excellent day.